My name is Emily Thompson, born into a prestigious family where the title Doctor came before our last name. My grandfather was once the director of a major hospital in Boston. My father, Dr. Richard Thompson, is a renowned cardiologist invited to speak at global conferences, and my mother, Dr. Margaret Thompson, is a strict and meticulous surgeon. For them, success was always tied to white coats, awards, and reputation. I have an older sister, Sophia, 3 years ahead of me. Tall, graceful, academically brilliant, and the pride of the family after she aced her medical entrance exams and got into Johns Hopkins. Sophia was the perfect daughter everyone admired. And me? I was the shadow that trailed her throughout my childhood. I wasn't fair-skinned like her, didn't have her charming smile, nor the ability to please adults with sweet words. I was quieter, more introspective, and I hated the sight of blood. While Sophia played doctor, I sat cutting paper, drawing business plans and tiny store layouts in my room. But to my parents, those hobbies were a waste of time. At every parent-teacher meeting, my father would say, "My eldest daughter is studying medicine brilliant girl. The younger one, well, she's still figuring things out." I heard every word, even when he thought I wasn't listening. I tried. I really did. I joined the science club, entered district competitions, and even won 3rd place in biology. But my mother barely glanced at the certificate and muttered, "Sophia won 1st place when she was your age," before returning to her patient charts. Once, I proudly brought home a math test I scored 95 on. My mum looked at it and said, "Sophia was solving college-level problems at your age." I walked back to my room clutching that paper, feeling like every step forward I took was erased by my sister's name. I wasn't thin like Sophia. I was shorter, round-faced, curly-haired, and wore glasses. While she got new dresses and salon visits, I wore her hand-me-downs. Once, my mum casually said, "If you'd lose some weight, maybe you wouldn't look so mismatched next to your sister." I laughed it off, but that night I cried myself to sleep under the blanket, muffling the sobs. The comparisons weren't deliberate. They were a habit embedded in every meal, every compliment, every silent judgment. And over time I started to believe it that I was the flawed draft in a family of perfection. I never hated Sophia. In fact, I once wished we could be close like the sisters on television. But every time I tried to get closer, she'd push me away with that sharp voice masked in politeness. Don't try too hard. Some things are just not meant to be. Maybe she didn't mean to hurt me, but I heard her loud and clear. My childhood was filled with efforts that went unnoticed, disappointments that quietly piled up. In that big, well-respected house, I always felt out of place trying to squeeze into a frame already built for someone else. But as I grew up, I realized something: I couldn't live in her shadow forever. I wanted to be myself even, if that self disappointed everyone. And that was when the first seed of rebellion was planted. Silent, but deep enough to grow into a decision that would change my life. I never imagined that one acceptance letter could turn me into a traitor in my parents' eyes. During my senior year of high school, everyone assumed I would follow Sophia's path and apply to Johns Hopkins for medicine. But in secret, I sent my application to the University of Chicago's School of Business. I knew if I told them early, it wouldn't just be an argument, it would be war. When I received my acceptance letter, along with a partial scholarship for business administration, my hands trembled not from joy, but from knowing the storm it would unleash. I kept it hidden until my parents threw a graduation celebration in our backyard, decorated with fairy lights, classical music, and a guest list of physicians and professors. They raised their glasses to toast me as the next doctor in the Thompson legacy. My father stood in the centre, wine in hand, and proudly declared, "To our youngest, Emily soon to be a med student," following our tradition. Applause echoed around the garden. My mother beamed. Sophia stood beside her with arms crossed, and that look of approval she reserved for moments that made her feel superior. I looked around at the familiar faces, the eyes filled with expectations, and I felt something inside me break. I couldn't stay silent. I pulled the folded acceptance letter from my jacket and stood up. "I'm sorry, but I won't be studying medicine. I got into the University of Chicago Business School. I want to study business. I'm not going to be a doctor." The music stopped. Every head turned toward me. No one clapped. No one smiled. My mother's wine glass hovered in midair, her hand frozen. My father's face turned red. "Say that again," my mother whispered, each word sharp and cold. I got in. "I want to pursue business maybe, something in healthcare innovation, but not as a doctor." My father stormed over, grabbed the paper, read it in seconds, tore it in half, and dropped it at my feet. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" he growled. "You're throwing away your chance to be someone valuable." My lips trembled, tears threatened, but I refused to let them win. My mother didn't speak again, she just turned away. Her hands clenched. Guests quietly slipped out. No one said goodbye. The celebration ended like a funeral. That night, they summoned me into my father's office. It felt like a courtroom. "We don't have a daughter studying business," my father said. "If you take this path, don't expect a single dollar from us. And don't drag the Thompson name into some meaningless startup," my mother added coldly. I sat in silence, angry, hurt, terrified. But the part that shattered me most was Sophia. She stood by the bookshelf, saying nothing. I looked at her, hoping for support, a word, a glance, anything. She shrugged. "You made your choice. In this family, there's no room for outliers." The next morning, I packed my things. My father had already frozen my bank account. I had $100 in cash enough for one nice meal or a one-way bus ticket. I chose the latter. With my backpack on, I walked out of the house I'd lived in for 18 years and didn't look back. I knew if I did, I'd cry. And I was done crying in front of them. I had no idea what waited for me. But I knew if I stayed, I'd lose myself completely. And so I left the home that rejected me, stepping into a future built on nothing but my own determination. The night bus to Nashville pulled away from the terminal at exactly 8 p.m., and I sat near the window clutching my worn-out backpack like it was all I had left in the world. Inside were a few old clothes, a notebook filled with scattered business ideas, and a hollow ache that sat heavy in my chest. I didn't cry not because I wasn't hurt, but because I had already run out of tears. My destination was a small college town in Tennessee, where my best friend, Rachel, was studying at a community college and living alone in a studio apartment. I had once helped her with a project that saved her semester, and when I called her that night, she didn't ask questions, just said, "Come here." No explanations needed. I arrived early the next morning, and her place was modest, barely bigger than a dorm room, with a noisy ceiling fan and a single twin bed. Still, to me, it felt like a sanctuary. I slept on a thin mattress on the floor. Rachel insisted I take the bed, but I couldn't. Every morning, she left for class, and I stayed behind, scouring job ads, walking past bulletin boards, and calling every number I could find. I had no degree, no resume, no safety net, just time, and a quiet fire inside me that refused to go out. Eventually, I found a job serving coffee at a tiny diner near a manufacturing plant. I started at 5 a.m., wiped tables, cleaned cups, and earned $30 a day. In the afternoons, I worked part-time at a local print shop, entering data and sorting papers. Sometimes, I copied notes for college students in exchange for a few extra bucks. I did everything I could. Every night, after washing off the ink stains and kitchen grease, I'd open my notebook and sketch out the same dream. A simple digital system that helped small clinics manage patient records and appointment reminders, something to make life easier for doctors and safer for patients. I had shared this dream once with my mother, who scoffed, "You want to tell real doctors how to do their job before you've even saved a life?" But I couldn't let it go. One afternoon, while working at the print shop, a man walked in to print a stack of documents filled with hospital logistics diagrams and Japanese management models. I asked, curious, "Are you in healthcare?" He smiled kindly. "I teach healthcare administration at the State University." I hesitated, then asked, "Do you think someone outside the medical field could help improve hospital systems?" He studied me a moment and asked, "What's your background?" "None," I admitted. "I was disowned for not going to med school. I want to study business." He handed me a card. "Apply to our evening program. We offer scholarships. You'll have to work hard, but I'll help." I walked home holding that card like it was a golden ticket. For the first time in weeks, I believed I might actually have a path forward. I told Rachel, and she hugged me, tears in her eyes. "You're not a reject, Emily. You're the bravest person I know." That fall, I became a student not at an Ivy League school, but at a place where I finally belonged. I went to classes by day, worked late into the night, and spent weekends proofreading my professor's materials in exchange for mentorship. Slowly, my idea began to evolve. With his guidance, I drafted a plan for a Startupone that would eventually become ClearPath, my first venture. From a cramped apartment with a creaky fan, I imagined software that didn't save lives directly, but gave doctors the time and tools to do it better. I still lived on ramen and wore second-hand clothes. But for the first time since I left home, I began to believe again. Not in their version of success, in mine. I once read that success isn't about knowing how far you'll go, it's about knowing the next step and taking it anyway. I didn't set out to become a CEO. I just wanted to survive on my own terms without ever needing to beg for approval again. By my second year in college, with my professor's support, I began testing a bare-bones prototype of ClearPath software for private clinics to manage patient records, appointments, and follow-ups. The design was ugly, the code clunky, but it worked. One local clinic agreed to test it, and after a month, the doctor said, "This is the first system that doesn't make my job harder." I stood outside that clinic, listening through the door as he told a colleague, "I finally have time to talk to my patients instead of digging through folders," and I felt something inside me click. For the first time, what I built was helping someone in the real world. I started pitching it to more clinics. I printed flyers, knocked on doors, and begged for 15-minute meetings that sometimes took hours of waiting. Some doctors laughed. "What do you know about healthcare? You're just a dropout with a keyboard." Others, tired and overworked, nodded. "We don't need another machine. We need something that actually works." With 2 paying clients, I had just enough income to rent a spot at a shared workspace downtown. I met 2 software engineering students, Jason and Omaru, agreed to join me in exchange for equity. No salaries, just shared hope. We worked around the clock, surviving on microwave noodles and ambition. We took turns sleeping on the couch, fixed bugs at 3 a.m, and celebrated every new feature like it was a victory. Sometimes I wondered how much easier this would be if I had parents wiring me money or cheering me on. But because I had no safety net, I had no choice but to keep moving forward. Over the next 2 years, ClearPath spread quietly among small clinics across the Midwest. We added features for prescription tracking, scanned test results, and auto-generated billing summary tasks that stole hours from every doctor's day. Then came our first real breakthrough. A county hospital was under audit for errors in billing and paperwork. Their admin team couldn't afford a major system, so they asked if we could try something. We said yes. I remember the night we arrived. We worked from sunrise to past midnight, training staff, uploading records, cleaning up data. Within 6 months, their internal costs dropped 30%, and insurance claims were processed without a single flagged mistake. A local health publication wrote an article about 3 college kids streamlining hospital systems without a medical degree. And for the first time, people outside our little bubble took notice. A small VC firm reached out. They offered $80,000 in seed funding. "We're not sure your product will dominate," they said, "but we know you won't quit." When I signed the term sheet, my hands shook just like the day I opened my college acceptance letter. But this time, no one stood behind me to celebrate. No father, no mother, no sister. Just Rachel, who still worked night shifts to help cover our rent, and Professor Allen, who squeezed my shoulder and said, "You're doing what most people with privilege never dare to turn pain into purpose." With the funding, we expanded the team, launched a real marketing campaign, and streamlined our onboarding process. I still wore thrift store jackets and ate cafeteria food, but something had changed. I no longer feared being seen. I knew who I was and what I stood for. By the time I turned 25, I was officially the CEO of ClearPath. 7 public hospitals across 3 states had signed long-term contracts. We were saving time, cutting waste, and giving exhausted medical staff the thing they needed most: breathing room. One day, I received a photo from an old cousin, my mother, holding her phone, reading the headline. "Startup led by young CEO revolutionizes hospital workflow." She didn't call, she didn't message, but I knew. She saw me. And for the first time in years, thinking of her didn't hurt anymore. I had convinced myself I would never see them again, that some doors weren't meant to reopen, but fate is never that polite. One chilly afternoon, while waiting for a haircut, I mindlessly flipped through a lifestyle magazine until a photo made my fingers freeze. There she was, Sophia Thompson, smiling in a glossy engagement announcement with her perfect fiancé, Dr. Andrew Collins, head of digital innovation at St. Mark's Medical Center in Boston. My chest tightened. Not from jealousy, but from the irony. That hospital was now using ClearPath, the system I built. I laughed, quietly at first, then shook my head. Of course. After 7 years of silence, I'd be attending her wedding in the most indirect way possible. I told Jason, now my partner and boyfriend, while walking home from a board meeting. He asked softly, "Do you want to go?" I hesitated. "They won't invite me." "You don't need an invitation," he said, holding my hand. "You just need to be ready." I thought about it for days. Then, one night, halfway through writing a speech for a medical conference, I closed my laptop, turned to him and whispered, "I'm going, not to prove anything, just to close the chapter." The wedding was held at an upscale hotel in downtown Boston, a place where polished floors reflected polished people. The entire medical elite was there: professors, surgeons, hospital administrators, the same crowd who once toasted Sophia as the family's legacy and looked through me like I didn't exist. I arrived in a cream-colored gown, elegant but understated, standing beside Jason like a guest from another world. I told no one I was coming, no grand entrance. I simply stood quietly in the corner, just observing. That is, until Aunt Linda, my only relative who hadn't completely cut me off, spotted me. Her voice rose, a little too loudly. "Emily, is that really you?" It was enough for my mother to turn around. She froze. Her face shifted from surprise to something tighter panic, maybe. She stormed across the room, grabbed my arm. "Why are you here?" I gently pulled away. "I came to wish Sophia well. Nothing more." "You weren't invited," she hissed. "This is family." I kept my voice calm. "And I guess I'm not family anymore, right? Just the founder of the software Andrew's hospital relies on." Her eyes flared. Whispers had already begun. Then Sophia appeared flawless as ever in her gown, her eyes narrowing when she saw me. "What are you doing here, Emily?" she snapped. "I'm not here to ruin anything," I said, steady. "I just came to say congratulations. But if you'd rather I leave, I will." Before she could answer, a voice behind us interrupted. "Wait, who is this?" It was Andrew. My mother quickly stepped in. "Just an old acquaintance. She doesn't belong here." But Andrew looked closer. "Hold on. Are you Emily Thompson, CEO of ClearPath?" Silence. I nodded. "Yes." He turned to Sophia. "You said your sister was some dropout, but her company's system cut our hospital's admin costs by 20%. Her face paled, as if her carefully curated image cracked under a spotlight. My father walked over, stone-faced. I turned to him in the room. "7 years ago, you told me I wasn't worthy of the Thompson name. Today, the system I built runs in hospitals you all depend on." I faced the crowd and my judges. "I didn't come to reclaim anything. Just to show up as the woman I've become and for acceptance. Not for praise, but for closure." And then I turned and walked out. No drama, no tears, just peace. I didn't need their blessing. I didn't need their applause. I had already won the moment I no longer needed them to see me. Some of us are born not to fit the mold our families or society lay out for us. We're not brilliant in the ways they expect, not safe in the paths they endorse. But that doesn't mean we are any less worthy. Emily was once labelled a disappointment simply because she chose differently. Not because she was wrong, but because they couldn't understand. And yet, in the deepest loneliness, she rose not to prove a point, but to protect the one thing no one else could define for her, her identity. The road wasn't easy. There were nights she slept on cold floors, worked without pay, faced rejection after rejection, but it was in that quiet struggle that her purpose was born. She didn't become the pride of her family, but she became someone proud of herself. Her idea didn't save lives like a doctor's hands, but it gave doctors the time to save others. And sometimes that's more than enough. Forgiveness isn't about whether others deserve it. It's about freeing ourselves from the weight they left behind. True success isn't about making them regret what they did. It's about no longer needing their approval to know who you are. If you've ever felt like the outsider, like the one they overlooked or left behind, remember this. You're not wrong. You're just walking a path only you can understand, and that's more than okay. If this story spoke to you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Someone out there might need your words more than you know. Card, like this video if you believe we all deserve the freedom to live our truth. And subscribe for more real, healing and powerful stories like this one. Wishing you the courage to walk your own path even if no one claps at the start.